All right, let us begin. Welcome again. My name is Małgosia Mazane. I'm a senior program manager on the Customer and Partner Engineering Engagement program in Microsoft, and I will be your moderator today. I would like to introduce Vikram Jayaram, who's also a senior program manager on the Experiments program in Microsoft, and he'll lead us through the session today. Again, we'll have a Q&A at the end, and with this, Vikram, please take it away.
Thank you. Thanks, Malgosia, and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us and hope you're having a good time at the Build conference. I will get started shortly. So I would like to start with a quote by our leader, CEO, Mr. Satya Nadella, where when he took over the reins of Microsoft a few years ago, and this is a sentence that really resonated with us, which is, we will modernize our engineering processes to be customer obsessed, data driven, speed oriented, and quality focused. And that is where our methodology came into place as well. So in the last few years, as a company, we've been focused on increasing and culturally transforming ourselves to building more customer-centric products. And so the questions we asked ourselves in the process was, how do we create systems for listening to customers that would both enable us to listen to more points of view, as well as to listen better? And the experiments model has really helped in the cloud's transformation, given the velocity and complexity of the emerging marketplace. Customers have claimed that this new way of co-creating solutions at Microsoft has just been very beneficial, and it truly ushers in what I call the customer-obsessed thinking that our executive leadership has been talking about. So what we'll do in today's session is we're going to share with you on how the methodology works, how our model works, how you can help us as we continue on this journey of being customer obsessed, and some best practices as you work with your customers and your developers in building the solutions and the products they want. So the purpose of this presentation, as I said, is to provide a high-level overview of the experiments methodology, and of course, a call to action, how you can be part of the journey. So speaking of customer-centric, and I think the first thing we get asked is, what does customer obsession really mean? Or more importantly, how does customer obsession help you? And if I had to break it down into 4 areas, it would be understanding your customers, acting quicker on their feedback, seeing changes in satisfaction and usage, and most importantly, measuring what matters to the customer as well as to your business. And our methodology helps you focus on data speed and quality. And I think we're in an industry, we're in an age now where it can be more important than it is now, just as a lot of us are moving from just being very, very technically focused to spending more time being customer centric and understanding our customers. So in the spirit of, so we then ask ourselves, why was customer empathy and obsession important? Why are they the keys to being successful? And in addition, what did we need to do internally to make some changes, right, that we needed to do? Remember, I said at the start that we needed to create systems for listening to customers that would enable us to listen to more points of view as well as listen better. The biggest and the truth is our customers are very diverse and they have very diverse wants and needs. For example, some work in highly regulated industries, some work for startups. Some developers code full-time, some of them probably code for a few hours a day. Some use traditional Windows forums, some are using open source. And this is just developers. In short, a very, very diverse audience. So how do we listen to these customers? How do we listen being diverse in our perspective, but yet being very inclusive in our approach? We realized we need to get out of the Redmond bubble, and we needed to stop asking the same set of customers for feedback, the same set of people who at times we kind of knew what they'd be saying anyway. How, as a culture, do we start to talk less about ideas, but instead start validating assumptions? Because the problem with an idea is you come up with it, and the next thing you know, you're spending an entire engineering cycle building a product just based on an idea that perhaps a customer, and you build a product that perhaps the customer didn't even want. So instead, how about validating our assumption with a customer early on in the journey? Understanding that the idea of user experience, UX, is a shared responsibility. The fact that it was no longer just a researcher's job to go interview customers or create a survey or run a prototype, but have engineers and product managers do the same, democratize these UX skills. So the UX designers and researchers could also focus on critical and strategic and advanced research areas, whilst product managers, the ones being the closest and the nearest to the customers, are actually having some of these techniques. And that was one way that we came up with in building this customer empathy and obsession throughout the org. And finally, being able to capture insights and data, insights being meaningful insights, but also be able to capture this at scale. And when we thought about the formula that's needed to start getting more customer centric and being more successful in what we build, this was it. Changes, recognizing the importance of customer empathy and obsession, and making sure that we're making changes inside and seeing how we can help foster this and grow this. And with that came to be born the experiments methodology. In short, our experiments methodology is a lean and agile customer-centered development framework, which enables hypotheses-driven learning from customer data through rapid experimentations. It draws inspiration from other techniques, lean startup, design thinking, and lean UX. But the key is to combine the best of each into an approach that works for the scale of a company like Microsoft, where you've got products that have been around for a long time, you've got greenfield solutions. But regardless of what teams are trying to build, this helped us gain alignment around our user needs and the problems we were solving together, as well as reducing risk through rapid iterative hypotheses testing, reducing risk and knowing that as you move on to the next stage, you have a higher level of confidence that you're kind of on track with what the customer wants. The beauty about experiments is it scales from very short release cycles, which could be in days, to sometimes fairly a long semester or a quarter. And they are inherently measurable at every phase of development. So right from the customer and problem discovery to solution ideation and creation down to release into a market, as well as growth of a market. It also applies, the methodology can apply very well to hardware, software, services, or processes. As I said, the key was all about a hypothesis. So what is a hypothesis? Well, it's a scientific method in research, scientific method in which a problem or a question is identified, relevant data is gathered, and a hypothesis is formulated and tested with an experiment. After testing a hypothesis, there are 3 courses of action, of course. You can reject the hypothesis based upon customer data and create a new one. You can refine your hypothesis and gather more data. Or you can accept the hypothesis as being reasonably true and move to the next step of your development process. This is how a lot of teams discover and deliver solutions right from the get-go. And remember that creating and testing a hypothesis to reduce development and business risk, by ensuring you're continually learning about your customer needs and how well you are meeting those needs. You can measure your customer's experience and confidently take action, knowing that your decision is grounded in reliable customer data. Experiments, in short, help give a diverse audience a voice. They help identify and validate your assumptions by actively listening to your customers and users, and also partnering with them in ideating and co-creating solutions. In the past, we've had other programs too. So I want to be clear that an experiments methodology doesn't just mean doing what a customer says, or just discussing specs or features, or just being another voice of customer channel. But it's truly understanding what is blocking the customer, what is it that we can solve today for the maximum impact. So for those of you familiar with lean startup and design thinking, I said the core of experiments is around hypotheses-driven learning from customers through rapid experimentations. The brilliance is you don't just do it when you focus on a problem, but you also co-create with a customer when you're focusing on the solution. So as you look at how the maturity of a product evolves, you always start with the same set of questions. What are the biggest customer problems? What do I have to do to solve these problems with a delightful user experience? How do I deliver these as an engaging service? And how do I drive these services as a growing business? These are the same questions that you see at different stages of the product lifecycle at the different stages of product maturity, for each of these, you experiment with it. So with every stage, you're going in with that extra level of confidence and not putting in a lot of money or resources into just a decision based on an idea. So from here, we will quickly do a tour on the different stages, the 4 stages of the methodology, and I'll be spending a little more time on the first 2 because I think that's really where, well, the session's only for about 20 minutes, and that's kind of really where the heart of the methodology is. The first part is a problem discovery. Now, I spoke about a hypothesis. A hypothesis is not meant to limit you, but when you create one, it provides a means for you to evaluate your understanding of a customer. Hypotheses start with assumptions you may have or questions you need to answer, but eventually you will craft a hypothesis based upon your best thinking and test it with your customer. So why do you even have a hypothesis? Well, it allows you to clarify in a way that is testable. And so the first step of experiments is to create that hypothesis to test with customers to identify the biggest problem. Because remember, a successful product solves the biggest problems customers are facing today. Customers don't pay for technology, they pay for solutions to their problems. And our experiments methodology helps provide the necessary tools and techniques to discover those problems. And what are we trying to say here? If you guys want to know what this slide means, manufacturers do not necessarily want a quarter-inch drill. They just want a quarter-inch hole. And let's be honest, they have many options for making that hole. You could cast it in place, you could punch it out, you could laser cut it, you could use an electrical discharge machine. In short, what we're trying to say here is customers hire your product to achieve a business objective. They don't want products or features, they just want results. And true customer centricity begins when you think of the primary job the customer needs to do. As I said, they need to accomplish something in their work, and we've got to spend time, and we spend time doing these interviews and understanding what is it, why, what are the motivations for them to complete a job, and what is getting in their way. And once we identified customers and the jobs to be done, the next phase would be building a hypothesis. Know the difference between a job and a task, because quite often many of us seem to get confused with it. So to us, as an example, a job would be 2 people sharing information. I need to share information with my peer Margosia, but a task would be sending an email to her. And whilst it's really good to understand challenges your customers having sending email, true customer centricity is when you're learning about the job of sharing information. And you use this job to frame the hypotheses, and you use a hypothesis to build a discussion guide. I have an example of a real hypothesis that was used in one of the planning of one of our Power Apps team. As you can see, it's very clear. We've got customers identified not as a Power BI user or a Power Apps user, but as an app maker. Their job was around organizing and managing workflows, had nothing to do with software or a particular software. And the problem was that it was hard to do it with the existing tool set. Once you've framed this hypothesis, you build a discussion guide. And now always interview customers with a discussion guide. It helps that you don't go off track or ask biased leading questions to your customers, but it also helps you to capture similar data across interviews. So you follow up with surveys, numerical data before you can prioritize problems, but you will know what you need to do to solve the maximum impact both to you as well as your customer. From here, we can go to the second phase where you're creating and testing solutions with customers to solve their top problems. As innovators, it's not enough to simply identify problems, but the goal is to find opportunities and provide solutions that move your customers from using your products to needing your products to loving your products. And how can we be sure we've got the right solution to that problem? Or more importantly, how can we know that we've explored all possible opportunities? This isn't like the old world where we would just go dark and assume we're going to go build something and assume the customer loves it. But we actually sat down and started working with a customer right from a concept value statement. which is a verbal or a written description of solutions that emerge from learnings and brainstorming from the data that we collected in the problem hypotheses experiments. We test it with customers to determine if our solution hypothesis is true. And then we build storyboards to help explain the idea and get feedback on its value. And the process continues with increasingly higher fidelity solutions like wireframes and prototypes until our solution has evolved into a shippable MVP. So I actually have examples of storyboards that we've used. And yes, these are actual storyboards that senior engineers in Microsoft have had conversations with senior and exec leaders in other companies just to give them the idea of how we're thinking. This is how organically we are culturally transforming ourselves to make sure that we're listening to your feedback as we build a product, building with you instead of just for you. And from here, the next set of slides is actually from Project Sangam, which is actually an educational-based learning solution that Microsoft Discover released last year. This is how it all started. Very simple wireframes and prototypes of the experience. And this is a short video, which I may not get a chance to play to its full video just due to time constraints, but this was a video that was less than about 2 minutes that was actually showing our customers the experience of what our solution would be like. What you want to notice here is we've not gone into any spec review. And as you notice, the only voice that's talking right now is mine, but the actual video has no sound because we want customers to walk through the experience and see what's going on in their mind, have them narrate the experience as they see this, which is also a very great and a very powerful way of getting feedback from them. This is how early on in the game we're engaging customers. As you probably figured out by now, we haven't even started writing a single line of code. That's what's brilliant about it. When we begin writing that code for the MVP, we already know what the customer's biggest problem was, and we can go in with a very strong sense of confidence that we know we have designed the solution that will meet the customer's needs. So fast forward to the point where we have a verified and implemented MVP to solve our customer's top problem. It doesn't end here. Now we use the experiments methodology to deliver the MVP to the mainstream market and measure the impact on our business goals. And the way we do this is the purpose of a service phase, as we call it, is to ensure the MVP meets its intended experience and business goals by delivering value to the early majority. And the first step is to drive customer acquisition. You may also need to meet other business goals or KPIs such as customer engagement, retention, and reliability. Our experiments methodology guides you to iteratively create and test hypotheses to learn which factors impact target KPIs and how to take corrective action to reach those business goals. And there is an example in the stage on how we would run an experimental hypothesis on the service phase. And finally, in the growth phase, you now apply everything that we've learned about this methodology to grow the market for the product to include segments. So we spin off several simultaneous initiatives to develop new capabilities to meet the needs of customers across the full breadth of the market. And the growth phase has basically 3 unique characteristics. First, you focus on driving growth through the entire mainstream market. And then the experiment methodology that you conduct would include marketing tactics to reach both the early and the late majority, which requires close partnering with marketing and integrating engineering design support into a unified team. And of course, this partnership also ends up opening opportunities. It brings a full range of talent to the group of growing to the job of growing your business by meeting the full breadth of customer needs end to end. And this represents, in my opinion, a mind shift and a behavioral shift in the way products are now developed, marketed, and supported. And of course, what I also do want to call out here is, as you spin out multiple initiatives, it gives you an opportunity to discover new customer problems because the landscape's changing. Customers have new needs and wants, and with those new needs and wants come new problems. So this gives us the opportunity to discover those problems and use the experiments methodology back to square one to continue creating compelling solutions for those problems. So before I have a call to action, to summarize in this very, very short presentation on how the experience methodology has been helping so many teams across Microsoft, the biggest has been systematic and methodical customer engagement. Now it's not just about engaging with just anyone, but it's carefully knowing who's my customer, what are their needs, what are their problems. Let me validate something with them before I build it. Let me make sure I'm measuring what matters. Internally, the biggest advantage we've seen is it's helped build a culture of common vocabulary and best practices where customer stories and customer success and customer insights are celebrated, and organizations, some groups like literally top down, even leadership reviews and other key leadership processes that happen as we build products are now no longer just driven by an idea, but they're driven by customer hypotheses and the data and the insights to validate it. So with this, I wanted to conclude this presentation around the experiments methodology, how it's been working in several groups across Microsoft as we continue to culturally transform to build the products that you so love and give you a wonderful experience. We also hope that we could teach you as you think of your customers and you think of the partners and the audience that you're building for. We wanted to share some of these best practices with you. And in addition, if you want to participate, I really request all of you to participate in our experiments methodology. It just takes about 2 minutes to opt into the program. So there's a website, there's a QR code. All it takes is once you fill the form up, we will reach out to you to invite you for engineering feedback sessions based on your interest. So again, I request you all to sign up and help us in our methodology program. So with that, I would like to conclude my presentation and open it up for any Q&A.
Thanks, Vikram. So looks like one of the most popular question is, why should you not share your hypotheses with the customers?
Aha, that is a very good question. Why should you not share your hypotheses with the customer? For the very simple reason that if you truly want to know what your customers' biggest problems, or what your customers' biggest jobs and biggest frustrations are, you want to be as open-ended as possible. And when you ask somebody for a hypothesis, when you share a hypothesis about, I have a feeling you are frustrated because of this problem, without realizing it, you're already leading them down the path. The best example that I can give you, an analogy, would be, there's a difference between asking you, what did you have for breakfast, versus asking, did you have eggs and milk and cereal for breakfast? Technically, both questions are okay, but when I ask you about, did you have eggs and milk for breakfast, I'm already closing you from all the other possibilities. Likewise, asking you, would you like to have an ice cream or a cookie, versus asking you, what would you like for dessert? The reason we have the hypotheses is you've got to start somewhere based on your guess, but you never want to ever convey to a customer that they've got to only work within that ring fence. Maybe you do believe that log tracking error messages is the most challenging problem for the customer. That's your hypothesis. But that could probably be the second of, or maybe the third out of 5 problems your customer has. Maybe your customer's real problem is they happen to be an admin, and maybe installation of your product or documentation on how to use it could be a bigger problem. Thank you. Any other questions?
Yes, there's plenty of questions. I'm just trying to be fair here.
Right.
So, how do you ensure feedback at scale?
That is a good question. Again, how do I? So I will say that depending on different products, you have different different customers and different maturity. So this is not meant to be a one size fits all. But in short, what I would say is, ideally, you don't want to interview so many customers to a point where it starts to get counterproductive. About 20 to 25 customers, if you've got the right profile, start to give you very strong trends. And you can then sum it up. You can then send a survey to get confirmatory quantitative analysis, quantitative data on some of the themes that you're seeing. So I would say that also, in addition, also, remember what I said about being diverse and you know, kind of making sure you're getting it from a diverse perspective. When you think of your product, think global. And as you try to pick customers as well, when you're aware of what you're building or the regions or demographics or whatever it is that affect your product, try to make sure that there's a well-balanced representation amongst the various demographics that benefit from your product, or specifically from a certain direction that you're thinking of heading into.
All right. Next up is Alper is asking whether there is a specific set of questions to start with to generate hypotheses, and whether do you use any experts with domain expertise to understand the issue properly.
Yes. Two very good questions. The brilliance about a hypothesis is you do not need to be a statistician or a researcher to generate it. The biggest thing is, I would say, sit back, just think of your customer, but don't think of a customer who uses your product, but think of a customer who's trying to get a job done for what your product has been built for. Try to think of all the things, the jobs the customers accomplish. And when I say customer now, maybe it could be an IT admin, or it could be a data analyst. Think of the jobs they're trying to accomplish around the theme of what your product's trying to solve. Now, in answer to your second question around domain expertise, one of the brilliance about this methodology is hypotheses is something that's been in the research world for the longest time. But the key about this was, how do we take some of these so-called research ideas that lean and design thinking and everything promote down to technical PMs? So would I say that domain knowledge is 100% necessary to generate a hypothesis? The answer is no. But having domain knowledge, and I say domain, not about product, but having domain knowledge maybe on the industry or the type of customer helps.
So how do you identify user problems? What are the sources of the user problems?
Various. First, it's what I call as history, right? Meaning you probably have bug reports, you probably go into user forums, forums, you go to events. I know we're not doing any in-person events this year, but you go to very social hangouts, you go to different seminars, and you look at telemetry, you look at feedback you're hearing, you work with the support organizations, you have a good idea of what user problems are. And the key is, as you go through these user problems, it's obviously, it's great, as I said in one of my examples about a job versus a task, right? Sharing information versus sending email. Obviously, if a customer is stuck sending email, you do want to troubleshoot and solve that problem. But as you go about reading and scanning all these user problems, don't worry too much about how the feature is broken and what API is not working. But think more around, when did this customer run into a problem? When they were performing a task. That task was being done to help what job? So you will then start to see some overarching themes around problems customers are having. Is it around installation? Is it around documentation? Is it around usage? Even in usage, what particular business scenarios or what particular parts of your product are they having issues with? To me, that is a problem. A problem isn't so much an error. I mean, that's also an error message or a bug and all that is a problem, but that's more feature level. That goes into troubleshooting and support. But planning and building the next amazing version of experiences would be focusing on the problem, the overarching problem when doing a job.
Thank you, Vikram. And we are at 2 o'clock, actually 2:01. We are at time. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending and for your super interesting questions. We really appreciate it. Any closing thoughts, Vikram?
Again, thank you very much for the time. I hope you enjoy Build. I hope you're able to take a few it was super, super quick. But as I said, it's very, very simple. Think of your customer, think of the problem. And my formula is, when a customer has a whole lot of problems, 3 very simple questions. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the severity of a problem? How often do you do this job? how often does a problem occur? The simplest of questions give you the biggest insights. Just learn to listen, ask open-ended questions, and boom, you are on track to building an amazing experience for your customers. Thank you very much.